Now we welcome in political strategist and racial equity expert, Ajoa B. Asamoah. Thanks for joining us, Ajoa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so most recently you served as the Biden-Harris campaign, really for their national advisor for Black engagement. What were some of the successes that you had in that role?
Well, thank you so much again for having me. I got a chance to work alongside some of the best and brightest, including my brother, Trey Baker, who served as the national director. We were tasked with mobilizing our community, engaging in ways that were meaningful. In terms of successes, you saw numbers that were unparalleled in terms of turnout for the first time that I'm aware of on any side for any presidential campaign. You saw a presidential campaign actually have an agenda for the African diaspora. You saw people excited and engaged about the idea of a Black woman ascending to, vice president. So whether it's the HBCU community or, the National Panhellenic community and Black women everywhere, Black and brown women everywhere, just the excitement for me personally, and I'm here obviously in my personal capacity, but in terms of successes, just the engagement, the excitement around this historic election, and the fact that we saw our people show up amidst a pandemic in record-breaking numbers.
Yeah, that was something definitely to be proud of. And you know what? I'm wondering too, given how divided we are as a nation with these outright full displays of white supremacy and just insurrection, in any way, did that impact kind of your job in terms of making it harder to get the message out?
I think what it did is it, allowed people to see the stark contrast between the candidates. So, our people have, this is not new information for us in terms of the Black community. We have, risen, if you will, against all odds. So I won't say that it made it more difficult. I think overall, the pandemic in general, was just a difficult time for everyone, not just specifically our community. So no, it didn't necessarily make it harder with the exception of, how we engage. We're a very high touch community. And so not really being able to engage with our people in person was a challenge, but it's one that we certainly were able to overcome.
Absolutely, you overcame it. Got the win there, which is so incredibly cool. Yes, historic nature. Yes, and I know that Biden has that 100-day plan for his first 100 days in office that really looks to uplift the Black community, which is just incredible. And so, what would you really like to see them do while in office to make the necessary changes?
Well, first, I should say that I think that the new administration has demonstrated a commitment to racial equity and advancing it. On day one, you saw an executive order that was signed that essentially rescinded that ridiculous 1776 commission. You saw our new president reverse a ban on training against diversity, equity, and inclusion. You saw our new administration direct agency leadership to review plans to ensure that they are in line with the administration's commitment to racial equity and to identify opportunities to advance racial equity. So I am excited about the opportunity to actually do the work that they were elected to do, and I have full confidence that they'll actually continue to do that.
Yes, and I'm excited to see it. And so let's talk a little bit about some work that you've done outside of the Biden-Harris administration. As I understand it, you worked on advancing the Crown Act, that historic legislation that definitely means something to me, but our viewers may not necessarily be fully aware of it. So can you please share with them more information about the Crown Act and the role that you played in making sure that those laws get passed?
Absolutely. So the Crown Act started as a piece of legislation, but essentially evolved into a full-fledged movement. But the bill itself seeks to provide protections for people who have been on the receiving end of hair discrimination. Now, most people might think that hair discrimination is covered under the current classification of race, but it's actually not. We have seen far too many students miss valuable instruction time and had negative educational experiences as a result of their decision to wear their hair naturally and or in protective styles, which is problematic for so many reasons. There has been a long-standing problematic practice of racial discrimination in this country. And in the form of hair discrimination, this bill is really shedding light on that problem. So the bill amends the definition of race, not defining race, because we do know that race is a social construct, while acknowledging that racism is very real. So what the bill actually does is it amends the definition of race to include the traits that are historically associated with it, such as hair texture and hairstyles. And so we've had great success working with a team of 5 amazing sisters since the beginning, and Kelly and Orlena and Marcy and AC. And we have been pushing forward. So it is now law in 7 states. It has passed in 8 legislatures. It passed the United States House of Representatives last congressional session, and we look forward to it moving further this year. And it really is a shift in not just policy, but also culture.
Absolutely. And because I know that something about hair discrimination is that it's generally impacted Black women in the workforce, which is very interesting in part because Black women are overrepresented in the workforce. So we've got tons of jobs. We're always out there, yet it's clearly holding us down and keeping us down. So thank you for making that change. Yeah, go ahead. All right.
No, I was just going to share that you mentioned in terms of the workforce. And so our students, of course, have been told that they can't participate in graduation exercises, or they've been sent home crying, or told they, can't participate in a wrestling match that, you've earned the right to participate in based on your talent. We've seen it impact our students, but we've also seen it impact, our ability to be, upwardly mobile by having job offers rescinded and being passed over for promotions, and, in some cases actually being fired, all for the decision to rock your crown how you see fit. So it's definitely problematic. It disproportionately impacts Black women, although not exclusively. It definitely impacts Black men as well.
Yes, and hopefully it will die out and be the end of that. And I also know that you have some experience as the chair of the Democratic National Committee's African American Leadership Council. And during your tenure, you've worked on several bipartisan initiatives. So to the extent that you can share, what are some of those initiatives and really kind of what lies ahead?
So really engaging our community in the party has been something that I've been able to work on with so many of my colleagues who work on the inside. Largely, I've been tasked with, bringing people into the fundraising space. But in doing so, we've had an African American Leadership Summit where we are really talking about the issues that matter. And, sometimes you're telling people, or encouraging people, I should say, to vote one particular way, but it's really critically important to lift the actual issues. And so together with my co-chair, Diane, we have really worked to ensure that the African American Leadership Council is not just about fundraising, but it's really about being fully engaged in the democratic process on our side.
Absolutely. And also, I know that, you seem to have your hands in a lot of things that are game changing, which is so incredibly cool. And I was wondering, what do you find to be most enriching about your work and the opportunities you have to contribute?
I really think it's about working on issues that I care about. You mentioned the Crown Act. That's something that for the last 2 years, I've been able to work on diligently, with so many lawmakers across the country, those, members of the National Black Caucus of State Legislators and Nobel women. But I also, a year ago, 2 days ago, I was able to work with a member of the council here in the District of Columbia to introduce a bill that essentially allows students to take Black history but count towards graduation credit. So whether it's, leading the community engagement efforts and working with lawmakers to codify the nation's first Office on African American Affairs, which I'm honored to do, to working on legislation that, again, puts our history and our lived experiences front and center, to engaging people and working, on the Democratic side, to really tackling issues around redistricting. Being able to do meaningful work is what's most important to me.
Yeah, so it seems like Adjoa does a lot when it comes to the workplace and getting things done. But what about the Adjoa at home who's been surviving this pandemic for what seems to be forever? What is giving you life right now as you stay indoors with this whole quarantine thing?
Well, definitely adhering to the guidance of our healthcare professionals and staying indoors. But I am getting life off of talking to my dad, who is abroad right now in Ghana, and talking to my goddaughter consistently, who is a 7-year-old, but so politically inclined, far more advanced than I ever was at her age, who calls me on a regular basis and wants to discuss politics. She told me she voted for Joe, and so she wants to know, when is this pandemic thing going to be over? So I get life off of the two of them a lot.
Oh, that's wonderful. They sound absolutely incredible, as are you. And so I want to thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell the viewers where they can find you on social media?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. I can be found at ADJOABASAMOAH on both Twitter and Instagram.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Adjoa.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.